Bringing people and communities together on seclosounds.org.
Your listening station.
Hi, I'm Terry Sullivan and welcome to this week's Sticks Radio Show. On the show today I have none other than Midge Ure, one half of Band Aid and Live8, also the mastermind behind Ultravox. We're going to be talking to Midge in a little while and playing tracks from his brand new album, which is out today, the 7th of July, called Fragile. Now let's start the show off with a track from the album. Before we talk to Midge, this is a track called Bridges. Today on the show I have singer-songwriter, well, he's done nearly everything, I think, Midge Ure. How you doing, Midge?
I'm doing incredibly well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the new album. We'll talk about your career. I think a lot of people know you from sort of years ago, but you have a brand new album out.
I do. It's been a while in the making, actually.
Is that why it's been 10 years since you last released anything sort of new?
Well, it's one of it's a variety of things, to tell you the truth. I mean, you know, when the music industry has changed so much in the last 10 years, you know, if you haven't got a record company banging on your door saying, "Hey, we desperately need, you know, a new album next week," you kind of take your time about it. So I just took my time and waited until I got something that I was absolutely perfectly happy with. So and of course I've done a lot of things in those 10 years as well. Yeah. You know, an Ultravox album and, you know, various live things and covers albums and whatever. But this is the first new music album that I've done.
Yeah, because it was interesting that you got back together as Ultravox. You know, I mean, there seems to be happening a lot with sort of, should we say, the 80s bands are all getting back together. You know, the Duran Duran got back together, and you know, a lot of the 80s bands are getting back together. Why did you decide it was the right time to get back together with Ultravox?
Well, it was never on the cards, to tell you the truth. It was the music promoters, Live Nation, who got in touch with us, the four of us individually, because we hadn't really been in touch a lot over that period, and said, you know, you realise, of course, that this year is the 30th anniversary of you writing Vienna, and we didn't realise that, of course. You know, you don't pay much attention to stuff like that. But they said, if you're ever thinking of doing anything again, this would be the time to do it. Go out and celebrate what you've done. So it got us talking, which was quite incredible, you know, because as I said, we hadn't really spoken a lot. And we started chatting about stuff, and of course, the intrigue starts to come in. You think, oh, what would it be like just to go up there and play those songs one more time? And the strange thing is that the moment we walked into a rehearsal room, and the moment we plugged in, and the moment we started to play, there was Ultravox again. It'd just been lying dormant for a while, and it just fired up, and it sounded just as great as it sounded back in the day. So we thought, yeah, let's go out and do this tour, just the one tour, nothing else. Yeah. Of course, that grew into an album, you know.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, there must be one guy you must hate. That must be Joe Dolce.
No, you know what? I've never met the man, and you know, and he owes me a huge, you know, debt of gratitude, because he's more famous for having hits Vienna at number 2 than he ever was for anything he ever did in his life. So you know, he must still be living off that, you know.
Oh, I'm sure he is. I mean, it's got to be probably the best song never to make number 1, hasn't it? I know it's your song.
I don't know. There's a lot. I mean, the BBC did a programme a couple of years ago about all the tracks that never made number 1, but they're just peppered with songs that you would swear had gotten to number 1. You know, massive songs. So you know, I think Vienna's in there with a good bunch.
Oh, I think it is. I mean, you stopped Wham from going to number 1, didn't you? With your "Do They Know It's Christmas," which we'll probably touch on in a little while.
Yeah. I think Wham were. I think George was incredibly gracious about that. I think he actually posted to his friends or said something in an interview about, you know, don't buy our record, buy the Band Aid records, which was an incredibly big thing to do for anyone. So yeah, we have to thank him for that.
Yeah, it's great. Well, let's just have a quick chat about the new album. I mean, I've listened to it. I love it, actually. I think it's because I see bits of Ultravox, I see bits of everything in there, really, that you've done. It's sort of
I think that's kind of what you become, you know. Each individual, everyone I know, whether you're a musician or not, you're the culmination of all your influences. You know, people who've influenced you. Your parents, your teachers, your friends, bits of music, films you've seen, books you've read, and because we all have different elements together, we turn out different people. So for me, musically, this is me holding my hand up saying, well, you know, I've done a lot of things, and I've been influenced by an awful lot of things over the years, and still am influenced by a lot of things. So again, this is what it is. It's very much me. It's very much Midge Ure, but you can hear elements of, you know, early kind of British blues guitar playing, and you can hear a bit of Mick Ronson in there, and you can hear a bit of David Bowie, and a bit of Kraftwerk, and a bit, you know, all of that stuff that you touch as you go through your career. but all of it sounds like me, so I'm very happy with this.
Because you collaborated with Moby as well on this album.
I did, and would you believe we've never met? We've never actually spoken.
Really?
It's a modern collaboration. It was all done online. We have an email and texting relationship. So hopefully, I'm going out to America in the summer, and hopefully he's going to come to the show at the Greek in Los Angeles where he lives, and we'll actually get to meet face to face. But yes, he sent me some ideas, some tracks, and said, I'd love to do some work together. And of course, by the time I finished the song, he'd already completed his album and put it out. So I thought, well, I think I'll commandeer that and altered it and put it on my album.
That's good. I mean, you say you're influenced by people. Who influenced you when you were a young lad? Who sort of did you listen to when you were sort of at home and sort of before you started?
Well, I think the radio was the big influence at the time, because radio played a bit of everything. It wasn't just pop radio, and it wasn't just middle of the road radio, or they didn't categorise it. It was just one station playing a bit of everything that was there. So you had a very kind of eclectic taste. So I remember the Beatles getting played early on, but I still remember hearing Frank Sinatra on the radio at the time. So when pop radio started with the pirate stations and things, and you started to become exposed to the Small Faces. I loved the Small Faces. Great songwriters. Really stylish guys, and they were small, which would really tick the box for me. So that was fantastic. The Beatles were fantastic, and then of course, as you grow up, as you start to kind of mature a little bit, you discover Roxy Music and David Bowie and all of that. So yeah, influences are incredibly important to me.
Because you grew up, I mean, I think it's quite well known. You come from Scotland, and I mean, what was the music scene like in Scotland? You growing up, was it very different than sort of, should we say, south of the border?
Yeah, for a band, for a young musician trying to make a living at music in Scotland was very different, because we didn't have a pub rock circuit. We couldn't pay a couple of pounds at the entry of a pub to go in and see a band perform, because the church ran the licensing laws in Scotland, and they wouldn't allow people to pay to see entertainment. So our places to play were like church halls and scout halls and discos and things. So you had to be a kind of musical jukebox. You had to be a human jukebox and play whatever was in the top 40 at the time. So there was no real way of exploring your own songwriting, of trying out your own new material. So we were kind of while we could see Eddie and the Hot Rods or whatever, doing all the pub circuit in London and reading about the Nashville and all of these great music venues, we didn't have anything like that in Scotland, because we weren't allowed. So it was very different.
When did you sort of first start sort of playing music yourself, rather than listening to other people's, and how did that come about?
Oh, I was guitar obsessed. I used to draw guitars on my school jotters and things and get a clip round ear for it. But I never got a guitar until I was 10. My parents paid the princely sum of £2 for the second-hand guitar, and considering my dad's wages at the time was £6 a week, that was a major investment for them. And I taught myself to play on that. So I'd played music kind of all the way through, but not as a profession. So I was in part-time bands right up until I was 18, when I joined my first full-time band.
Would that have been Salvation?
It was Salvation. I was already the guitarist when I joined as the guitarist. We were a five-piece band who were quite well known in the Scottish, circuit that I described. And the singer left after a couple of years, and I took over the vocals as well. We became a four-piece, and we changed the name to Slick. Yeah,
I remember Slick. But I tell you one thing: is it true that's where you got your name Midge from?
It is, yeah. When I joined Salvation, who, as I say, were quite an established band in Scotland, run by two brothers, Jim and Kevin, and because my name's Jim. So when I joined the band, he said, "Well, we can't have two Jims, so you're now Midge," and I flipped the name backwards, M-I-J, and we just changed the spelling.
Could have been, yeah. I was quite surprised at that, but I do remember Slick very, very well. I'm of the age where I was around that sort of time, and that was my sort of. I'm 51, 51 going 52 this year, and I remember Slick very, very well. The clean-cut image. I mean, it was, the writers were the same as the Bay City Rollers, weren't they? The songwriters you're using.
Yeah, the songwriters were exactly the same as the Bay City Rollers and Kenny and a lot of the bands who were around at the time.
Yeah,
and it was kind of they were the kind of stock aitken watermen.
I remember them very, very, very well. I mean, I had Les on with me last year about this time last year. He joined me on the show, Les McKeown from the Bay City Rollers, and he was a blast. He really was a great guy.
Yeah, he's a good lad.
He's a great. I think you must know each other probably across the past quite a few years over the years.
Oh yeah. I mean, except when I was doing the circuit, the Bay City Rollers were, as big as U2. They were huge. The Bay City Rollers, just as big as One Direction. I think.
Yeah. I know, it's frightening, isn't it? And then I heard a story. You turned down the Sex Pistols.
I did, because I didn't know it was the Sex Pistols at the time, but the way I was approached to and asked to kind of join this band, I just found very odd, because I met Malcolm McLaren in Glasgow long before anyone knew who Malcolm McLaren was, and he stopped me in the street and asked me about, he talked to me about this band, told me his background, and then half an hour into the conversation, asked if I could play anything, if I was a musician. And so I thought, well, this is just wrong. Surely that's the first question you should ask. So I declined and went on with my career the way I saw it going. And of course, a short time later, the Pistols arrived.
Yeah, and then you joined Glenn Matlock in the Rich Kids, and I remember that one. I remember them as well, very much so. Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny, having kind of run into Malcolm and been asked to join the Pistols, which Glenn was part of, and then a year or so later, finding myself joining up with Glenn anyway in his band. It was kind of completing the circle, really, in a way. Yeah, it was 1977. I remember. 77. That's right, exactly. I think that's when I moved to London in 1977. Yeah, and that must have been a big sort of thing for you, wasn't it, moving to London? Because I think a lot of people Manchester sort of got a big centre of music, and Leeds has a bit, and then there's London. Really, Scotland doesn't seem to have had. There was Simple Minds, I remember, coming from Scotland, but Scotland doesn't really have a huge sort of musical heritage, and you coming down to London must have been a big sort of step. It was a huge step, it's always scary leaving home and leaving your friends and your family and things, but it was an incredibly exciting time. I'd sit in Scotland, listening to the John Peel show and hearing all these bands that were, coming out and making records and being part of something that I was so far removed from. So the idea of moving to London was scary on one hand, but immensely exciting on the other. The first weekend I arrived and met up with the Rich Kids. We went out that night after learning 3 songs, and we opened up for the Police. Wow. We went somewhere else at a warehouse party where Sid and Nancy were hanging around, and the Clash were hanging out there, and Billy Idol was there, and Susie and the Banshees, and we went up and played the 3 songs there as well. It was just the most vibrant, exciting time. It was unbelievable. Yeah, I think the 70s to the 80s probably have the biggest sort of crossover, because you had the early part of the 80s, late 70s had the new romantic era and the electronic era with the Pet Shop Boys, and then you had the punk era as well, what they call the punk era. I must admit, I was at college then, and everything seemed to be a very eclectic mix then. It was really odd, It's like people like Dire Straits came through at that sort of time, and you're thinking, a guitar band like Dire Straits, how did they manage to make it through through all the other stuff? Sure, the likes of Elvis Costello, who was again associated with the whole punk new wave movement, but just wrote really contemporary, classic, beautiful songs. But it would seem to be a time that everything was kind of acceptable. It was a time of turmoil and a time of change. Technology was entering the arena, with the synthesizers and drum machines and whatever. And I actually bought a synthesizer and brought it into the Rich Kids, which kind of broke the band up. But the synthesizer that I bought went on to form Visage, and through Visage I ended up joining Ultravox. So there's a linear line. Yeah. It was all kind of punk. It was all punk in the sense that nothing fitted. You didn't have to be a 3-minute record anymore. You didn't have to fit a specific format. You could do just about anything, and if it was good, people kind of got it. So it was a really vibrant time. Yeah, I didn't know you were in Visage, I must admit. I always remember Steve Strange, and Fade to Grey is one of my favourite songs from the 80s. I play mostly 80s on the show, unless I have guests like yourself, which we're going to be playing some of your album tracks in the hour. Then I didn't realise you were in Thin Lizzy with Phil Lynott, and you wrote or co-wrote Yellow Pearl with him as well.
It did, yeah, which became a bit of a Top of the Pops theme for a while.
It did, didn't it?
Yeah, I was in the studio. I put Visage together. I put the concept together with Rusty Egan, my old drummer friend from the Rich Kids, and we wanted to work with all our favourite musicians, some who were in the band magazine, and of course Billy Curry from Ultravox, and we put this concept together. And I was in the studio finishing off producing the first Visage album when I got a phone call from Phil Lynott, who was in America, because Phil and I were friends, and he just said, look, Gary Moore's not in the band anymore, we've got another 3 weeks to go, we're opening up for Journey, we're playing in front of 20,000 people a night, we can't do it as a trio, will you come out and finish the tour? And it was just the most bizarre thing, but within 24 hours, I went home from the studio and I picked up a pile of cassettes and a set list, and I packed my bags and I picked up a plane ticket, and they sent me out to America on Concorde.
Wow.
And within 24 hours, and within 48 hours, I was on stage playing The Boys Are Back in Town. It was just bizarre, but absolutely, I was ecstatic. I'd never been to America before. I loved Thin Lizzy. I thought Phil was a great songwriter and a great singer. So I just had a ball, knowing all the time that I was a hired gun, and I was coming back with money in my pocket to put it into Ultravox, which was my big concern. It was my main thing.
Well, I suppose your £2 investment your mum and dad made back in the early 70s paid off dividends there, didn't it?
It certainly did, yeah. I think they reaped some of the benefits as well.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a little break. I'm going to play a track from your album. Which one would you like me to play?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there's a current single which has Become, but you know what? I'm not quite sure. I think Star-Crossed is one of my particular favourites right now.
We'll play Star-Crossed, and then we'll chat a little bit about sort of Vienna, about Ultravox, and then we'll talk about Band Aid.
Great.
Okay.
MK Flyers Online, the fast and simple way to find any kind of business or service locally. Find us at mkflyersonline.co.uk or download the MK Flyers mobile app from your app store. MK Flyers Online proudly supports Seclo Sounds, community radio for Milton Keynes.
Right, that was Starcross from the new album from Midge Ure called Fragile. Yeah, let's talk about Ultravox now. I mean, you said you'd been out to America, got a few pound from Thin Lizzy, and basically that helped you with Ultravox.
It did. I mean, you've got to remember, Ultravox, when I joined, had just been dropped by the record label. The singer and guitarist had just left. There was no real future there. But as a band, as a bunch of musicians, they were knowledgeable, they were exciting, they understood technology. It was again a really vibrant time. In fact, the moment that I walked into a rehearsal room for the first time, we had to scrape whatever money we had in our pockets together to pay for the rehearsal room, because we had no management, we had no one backing us. And the moment we went into the rehearsal room and started to play, it was the most magnificent sound I'd ever heard in my life. This mixture of traditional rock instruments, a bit of classical instruments, and technology, all making this wonderful sound. And I was in love. I just thought it was the most fantastic thing ever. So yeah, and to come back from the Thin Lizzy tour, Billy Currie had just done a tour with Gary Newman, who had just had Our Friends Electric, big hit there.
Oh, yes.
So he had toured with them. So we both came in with this money buying the equipment that we needed for Ultravox, because Ultravox was our main thing.
And where did Ultravox where did the name come from, Ultravox? It seems a sort of a strange name. Mind you, the 80s was an era for strange names, but... do you know
I wasn't around when the band... I mean, the band already had 3 albums out, so they'd been in existence from the kind of mid to late 70s, and I joined the band in 79. So I had nothing to do with the name of the... It'd be kind of bratish of me to come in there and start saying, well, I'm not sure I like the name.
I mean, it trips off the tongue, doesn't it? It trips off the tongue. I mean, and in 1984, we must talk about this. 1984, when you got together with Bob, Sir Bob it is now, isn't it? Sir Bob?
Certainly is.
I better call him that. And Band Aid. How did I mean? I guess he approached you and said, "I've got this idea."
Yeah, but it wasn't a direct approach. It was via Paula, his then girlfriend. Yeah. I was doing a TV show that she hosted, and she passed the phone on to me when he had called her, and he just said, "Look, I'm sitting at home here looking after, a kid, a baby, or whatever it was," and he said, "I've just seen this footage. I want to do something. Will you help?" And we met up a couple of days later and came to the stupidly obvious conclusion that we're not cut out to do anything other than make music. So we thought if we wrote a Christmas song and got a few friends to come and sing on it, we might get a number one. And if we got a number one over Christmas, we might raise £100,000. But none of us saw, just how huge this thing was going to become.
I mean, it sort of multiplied. I remember it very well. I mean, I was quite... in 1984, I was sort of... Well, how old was I? 22 then, goodness gracious.
Well, stop rubbing it in.
I know, I remember the Tube with Paula, and I mean... So, you co-wrote... How did that quite happen? Did I Know It's Christmas? How did that... Did you write the lyrics and Bob wrote the music?
Bob, after the conversation, we sat down and had the conversation, and I went home and I sat with a little toy kind of keyboard on my kitchen table, and I had it on a kind of bell sound, and I came up with the da 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 da, and I recorded it on a cassette and sent it to Bob, and then he turned up a couple of days later and said, "Well, I've written these lyrics," and started to sing this thing at me, which changed every time he sang it. So he was obviously kind of making it up on the hoof. And then I had a studio. Originally we wanted Trevor Horn to produce the record, but Trevor said it would take 6 weeks, and we didn't have 6 weeks. So we went to my studio, and I started assembling all the backing track. I played all the instruments on the backing track, and kind of glued these very, very different ideas together, and came up with Do They Know It's Christmas. And then we had the 24-hour period in the studio that everyone saw, with all the artists and Phil Collins drums and mixing the track. That we had to do it very, very quickly, because if we missed the pressing plants, because that was when they used to press vinyl. It took quite a while to press the vinyl and put it in its sleeves and get it out to the shops and things. If we missed the pressing plants the next morning, we would miss Christmas. So it was the pressure was on.
I mean, it sold huge copies, huge amounts of records. I can't remember exactly how many. And it was re-released a few years later, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. We did Band Aid 20. You know, I tend to think that it's one of those songs that because we donated the writing royalties to the Band Aid Trust, that every time that song's played, it still generates money. So that song could be interpreted and reinterpreted for decades to come by various generations of musicians, and the money would still go to Africa. So I think that's something that should and could happen.
Yeah, because you and Sir Bob, you got honoured with 2 Ivan Novella awards. I get my teeth organised this morning.
Yeah, the Ivan Novellas are like the industry, the songwriting industry version of the Oscars. So it's voted for by fellow songwriters, and we won twice with the Band Aid records, 20 years apart, which is quite incredible.
Then, of course, the concert. How much input did you have on the big concerts, or the 2 concerts, wasn't there? One in London.
The Band Aid Trust. We'd have meetings every other day about how the monies were being spent, and medication and trucking and shipping and all sorts of stuff. And we realised very early on that we didn't have enough money to achieve what it was we were setting out to try and achieve. So we had to generate more money. And Bob came in with a drawing one day on a piece of paper, and it was a globe and a knife and fork either side of the globe, and like a plate, and he said, "Look, I want you to do this concert, or these concerts." And we all kind of, once we picked ourselves up off the floor, because it was at a time when you couldn't pick up a mobile phone because they weighed so much, and you couldn't send an email because they didn't exist. So the idea of putting together these consecutive concerts either side of the Atlantic on the same day was a huge, tall order. But we got pulled our belts in and got on with it and did it. So then 20 years later, of course, we did Live8. And a whole series of concerts that time. Still the biggest musical events in the world. Yeah,
amazing. I'll tell you what, we'll take another quick break, and then we'll talk about your solo career, if I will. Can I choose a track this time? My favourite on the album is Dark, Dark Night.
Oh, good.
This dark, dark night.
Okay, that's Dark Dark Night from the new album Fragile. We'll rejoin Midge. Talk about your solo career after sort of Band Aid. You sort of left. You took a hiatus from sort of Ultravox, and after the Band Aid project. If it had been me, I'd have wanted to have a lay down and a sort of rest for a couple of years.
Well, yeah, I think that was the initial idea, but because I had my own studio, I'd already been, even way before Band Aid, I'd been working on material of my own, just solo stuff, just things that I wanted to do, not really with a view to putting it out, just doing it. And so once the Live8 event was out the way, the Ultravox were on this 6-month sabbatical, and I thought, well, I'm going to put the record out and just see what happens. And I put the record out, and it was very successful. And I went off on a tour. I went round the world in 80 days, just like Phileas Fogg.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was fabulous. But because of Band Aid and Live8 and whatever, that 6-month sabbatical turned into nearly 2 years. So by the time I returned to Ultravox again, we were very different people thinking in very different ways, and it kind of spelled the end for Ultravox.
That was, I mean, you did very well. The debut album with The Gift reached number 2, and then you quite modestly, you did actually mention the name. If I was a UK number 1 hit. Yeah,
I was very lucky.
Yeah, I mean, but then in 1998, a single "Breathe" was a hit in Europe as well, and
it was massive. There's been a few things in between, and it's that weird thing that in the UK we think all British music is, if it's not happening in the UK, it doesn't happen anywhere.
No.
And of course, something like "Breathe" was massive in every other territory in the world, I think, except the UK, because it was never released here. So it was just one of those really weird anomalies that happen in the music industry. But thank goodness those things. If you keep fighting the good fight and try and write things that you think are quality and interesting, someone somewhere will get it eventually.
Yeah, I think the music business in this country is very strange. If you're not in the charts, you're not working.
I think that's kind of it. If you're not in the charts and you're not in the tabloid papers, and you're not seen staggering out of nightclubs, people think you've fallen off a cliff, and it's not really the case. If you're a serious musician, you carry on working. I do film music. I produce other artists. I do lots and lots of different things, but not all of it means that you have to stick your head above the parapet to be seen. And I kind of like it that way. I don't like being too much in the limelight, because it brings out all the bad stuff as well as the good stuff.
Yeah, I must admit, it's why I quite enjoy doing radio rather than TV, because of people don't realise who I am, which is quite.
You can still keep some kind of anonymity.
It's quite good. But you've been honoured by quite a few awards. I mean, you got the OBE in 2005.
Yep.
And then you also got an honorary Doctor of Arts.
I have
from University of Aberdeen, Dundee.
Yeah, I've got 5 different degrees and didn't actually do any work for any of them.
That's got to be good, though, isn't it? That's got to be good. That's right.
There's been students up and down the country hating me.
Did you do any revision? No. And recently, recently as 2010, you got a Doctor of Law. An honorary Doctor of Laws from where you live now, Bath, in the University of Bath.
That's right. Yeah, I know. It's quite incredible. I think people like to give you a pat on the back for a job well done, and and the OBE in particular was great because it was not just for charity, it was for music, and I was very proud of that.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I saw you're actually an ambassador for Save the Children as well. Yeah,
I've been doing that for quite a while now, and one of my daughters is a junior ambassador for them as well. So yeah, it kind of runs in the family.
Okay, and also, I mean, the last time I think I saw you on TV was in something that I didn't expect to see you really in, is Celebrity MasterChef.
Yeah, I know. Well, the problem is that you're constantly asked to go into the jungle or do a wife swap or all of those things, and I keep turning them all down, saying I'm not interested. I'm a musician. I'm not interested in any of that stuff. And I said to my agent, look, if somebody comes up with something that I'm remotely interested in, then I'll consider it. And I put the phone down. Within an hour, he phoned back and said, right, I'm getting you to put your money where your mouth is, MasterChef, because I know you like cooking. And I've always loved the programme, so I thought I'd have a bash at it.
Yeah. Is there any other these reality shows you'd fancy a crack at? What's your dancing like? Are you?
Oh, listen, my wife's an ex-dancer, and I've been asked a few times, and I said to her, how do you fancy doing some ballroom dancing, knowing exactly what the reaction would be? And by the time I pulled her down from the ceiling, so she couldn't imagine anything worse than me hobbling around a dance floor, to humiliate myself in front of millions of people.
Well, it works for a lot of people. I must admit, I'm like that. As I had Pasha on the show last year, and he offered me a dance lesson after the show, and I said to him, Pasha, I have 2 left feet, and I've grown a third one, and he said, oh, I'll give you an hour. I said, you need a lot longer than that, my friend. The other thing I was reading about you're a recovering alcoholic.
I am. I think there's a lot of people out there who deny the fact that they drink too much, and I was one of the lucky ones who put my hand up and said, no, I've had more than my fair quota. It's time to do something about it. So I stopped, and I think and it's not one of those things you can just cure. You're never cured. You just got to stop and just hope that every day, one day at a time, you don't pick up another drink. And that's exactly what I've been doing for nearly 9 years now, I think.
That's good. I'm not sure I could. I must admit, I'm not sure I could give it up. I mean, I don't drink huge amounts, but it's I'm not sure it's something I would be able to give up.
It's not, funny. It's not always about the amount. It's the repetitiveness. If you and there's loads of people. Who come home from work and have a couple of drinks
every night,
and have a bottle of wine with dinner, and they'll do that every night.
Yeah.
And it's when you try and say, okay, put the brakes on, let's just stop for 3 months, and you go, oh, hold on, I'm not sure about that. So that's as much an alcoholic as anything. It's not the image of the alcoholic is the guy in the raincoat sitting on the park bench, with a bottle, and that's a cliche. There's alcoholics everywhere. They just don't hold their hands up and say, I've got a problem here.
Yeah, I think I'm addicted to Coke. We won't even go into that one. You mentioned sort of
Cola, I hope you're talking about.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about Coke. I'm talking about the drink. Yeah, I'm talking about the drink. No, we won't get. Oh, I realised what I said then. Could have got myself in a lot of trouble. But you said you like cooking. Is there any other sort of hobbies that you do away from music?
And everything I do is connected to it. So photography is connected to music. Making videos is connected to music. I do a lot of different bits and pieces, but the music is the centre of it all. So everything else is connected. The only thing it's not connected was the cooking. And that's a different art form. And it just meant that I didn't have to think about music all the time. You're thinking about putting elements together to create something else. So I thoroughly enjoy that. But not really. I'm not a sporty person. I don't have any mad passions.
No, if you were having a dinner party tonight and you could invite 3 other guests, so there'd be 4 of you, who would you invite? You can have living or dead.
John Lennon, because I think he'd be quite feisty, because I never met him. I worked with all the other 3 Beatles, but I never worked with John. Stephen Fry, because I think he'd be brilliant in any situation, with no matter who was sitting around the table. He'd be able to there'd never be a lull in the conversation, would there? Fred Astaire, I once almost met him. I was in the same room as him, and I was so young I didn't have the guts to go up and shake his hand and just tell him how brilliant he was. Not that he needed me to tell him that. And who else would I have? I would have Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg,
yeah. Okay.
And talk him into, having me score one of his movies.
Or not star in it, no?
No, I don't want to star in it.
Okay.
No. He's got ugly enough creatures in his movies. I'd love to sit and do the music for one.
That would be fabulous, wouldn't it? It would be great, actually. I think there's something about. We have a gentleman who does a show on the station called Soundtracks, where he plays a lot of movie soundtracks.
Right.
And I've listened to his show and listened to some of the music, and it's actually inspired me to go back and listen to some of the other
Absolutely,
music from films,
it's one of those things that when you go to the cinema, you don't really listen to the music. You might be able to walk out with the main theme in your head, but when you listen to it as a piece of music, it's really fantastic. It's wonderful stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned John Lennon. Is there anybody else you'd like to have worked with or would love to work with now?
I've worked with all my heroes. Not saying that I've kind of put a line under that now. There's plenty of people out there that you think would be interesting to work with. But the interesting thing for me is that it's a natural collaboration. It's not something put together by management or record companies or any of that stuff. They're usually put together for fiscal reasons rather than musical reasons. So I've been fortunate enough to work with all the people I respect and admire, either in the studio or live. So I'll keep my options open.
And what would you say? Final question. What would you say was the highlight of your career?
You know what? It's going to sound really stupid and cliched. Every morning I wake up and realise that I'm still allowed to do this. You know, it's the best job in the world. You know, just like yours is. You know, you get to do something that isn't a job. It's not a task. It's not a hardship. There's nothing hard about it at all. You know, that to me is an everyday highlight. There's many peaks and troughs, but you know that's all part of the career. To be able to wake up in the morning and carry on doing it.
Okay, well you're playing fairly close to the area this summer. You're playing on the 2nd of August at Audley End with quite a few other 80s stars. You're playing with Tony Hadley, Heaven 17, T'Pau, Katrina from Katrina and the Waves.
Yep.
Johnny Hates Jazz and John Parr. Now, that must be great fun working with that crowd.
Yeah, you know, all those people are great, and there's a reason that they're still around, and there's a reason they're still doing it. It's because they're actually very good at what they do. So, you know, those type of, you know, all-encompassing festivals are great because, you know, there's something on there that everybody's going to enjoy. There's always something on the lineup that, you know, if you were the most cynical music fan and thought, ooh, rubbish, there's bound to be something on there you go, wow, I didn't expect that. And they're a real surprise.
Yeah, I know. I must admit, I remember them all. Actually, I had the lovely Carol on the show last year when it was the anniversary of their album, and she was absolutely gorgeous. So she was absolutely.
She's funny.
Fun. She was a bit of a nightmare, but in the nicest possible way. You know, it was great fun. Anyhow, Midge, I'll let you get on.
Fantastic.
I'm going to play some more tracks on the album. I hope people love it and come and see you.
Great.
Thanks you very much for your time today, Midge.
Okay.
For the best travel locations around the globe, book your seat for the John Gwynn Travel Show on Seclo Sounds every Monday at 12 noon. Hear the latest advice and recommendations to help you achieve maximum enjoyment and value from your trip, no matter where you want to go or what you want to do. Also, check out John's travel report as he reveals the things that the travel industry could do better. The John Gwynn Travel Show, Mondays at 12 noon on Seclo Sounds. Check it out before you check in.
There we are. That was the new single from Midge Ure from the album Fragile. That's become. Big thank you to Midge for being my guest today. Next week on the show, I have a young lad I met recently at a talent show. He was the runner-up. His name's Ryan Praser. He comes from Luton. He's going to be performing for us live next week, so that's something to look forward to. Anyhow, I've been Terry Sullivan. This has been the Sticks Radio Show. Until next week, it's bye for now, and I leave you with a track from the new Ed Sheeran album called X, and I suppose this could describe me. It's called I'm a Mess.
Oh, I'm a mess right now, inside out, searching for a sweet surrender, but this is not the end. I can't work it out. How? Going through the motions, going through us. And oh, I've known it for the longest time, and all of my hopes, all of my words are all overwritten on the signs when you're on my road, walking me home. Home, 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 home. See the flame inside my eyes. It burns so bright. I wanna feel your love. No, easy, baby. Maybe I'm alive. Before tonight, I wanna fall in love. Put your faith in my stomach. I messed up this time, late last night, drinking to suppress devotion with fingers intertwined. I can't shake this feeling now. We're going through the motions, hoping you'd stop.
MK Pulse proudly sponsors Seclo Sounds. MK Pulse is Milton Keynes' local magazine, bringing helpful information on food, health, fashion, money, travel, culture, and much more to 66,000 readers every month. Plus news, views, and what's on from around the city. If it's happening in Milton Keynes, it's in MK Pulse, and it's available online at www.mkpulse.co.uk. MK Pulse and Seclo Sounds, the heart and soul of the city.